Hi everyone, it's me, John Loucaides, and I would like to talk with all of you a little bit about Moonbounce, the latest UEFI implant. I've been reading a lot over the last week, and it's rightly so because this implant is a lot more interesting and a lot more advanced than some of the previous UEFI-based implants that we've seen before. Now, there's a particular area that I think is interesting that I'd like to set the record straight and make sure that all of you are well aware of what helps and what doesn't, and that is the area of recommendations. Now, I understand why this area is complicated. Myself and a lot of our researchers here at Eclipsium have been in this space for many years, and we've been presenting about secure boot, and we've been presenting about UEFI and all of these other different attack vectors. And it's complicated, and you're not supposed to have to deal with firmware. So, when people give you recommendations about how to protect against something like Moonbounce, it's very important that you and they really understand what it is that a given technology does and what it doesn't do. So, the first recommendation, I see this a lot, it's secure boot. Now, it's really a great idea to secure all your stuff, especially in the back of a pickup. The boot being secure usually refers to one very specific thing, and that is UEFI Secure Boot. UEFI Secure Boot is the thing that you see in the BIOS menu when you push that button while your computer's booting, and you go into something like Advanced or Security or whatever, and you turn on Secure Boot Enabled. Cool. What that does is check a signature on the bootloader. Now, the bootloader is a file in UEFI. It's a file on a FAT32 partition that's just sort of hidden from everything else. It's the place you boot off of. You don't really use it for other data. So you're checking the signature on that file. That has nothing to do with the UEFI code in the SPI flash. So something like Moonbounce goes and changes the thing that runs way before that bootloader. And it's not going to really do much in this particular case. Now, is it a good thing to do? Yes. Earlier, we had a number of bootloader-based rootkits like FinSpy and eSpectre. That's what Secure Boot is for. Now, another one is just about these UEFI alterations themselves. This particular implant is really interesting because it takes this to the next level. It does what I would consider the reason why you go after UEFI. Well, you get persistence, but you also get stealth. This particular implant is actually modifying the operating system in memory as it's loaded. And then it does other things later in other stages to go and deal with command and control. That's probably how they got caught. The things that they did in memory are going to be very hard to see. And the place that they're living in terms of persistence is something nobody looks at, the UEFI SPI flash firmware. And so this sort of technique allows you to be invisible to most other systems. Now, when you go off and you dump terabytes of data onto the network, somebody probably notices that. When you go communicating with these command and control servers that have been actually identified as part of APT 41, yeah, you might get caught. But generally speaking, this area of memory-based persistence in firmware, it's not being looked at by most people, and that's why these things tend to work. The last bit is disruptive attacks. Now, disruptive attacks are not really what we saw here. This was more of a stealthy, persistent way of going after a lot of different machines and understanding what's in the environment. But it actually doesn't take much to do a disruptive attack once you've already been able to tamper with and alter the firmware itself. The difference is that you basically corrupt or erase the firmware instead of making a nice, very precise modification to it. Now, if you wanted to turn something like a espionage campaign into a disruptive campaign, it's probably a couple of bytes in your payload that changes. Instead of writing something special, you erase the boot block. And now you're done. We've done this in presentations, and it's been really fun when some of my colleagues have actually done this during the presentation on the system they were presenting from. You actually get this sort of zombie system that's still working until it reboots. And when it reboots, you're done. It's a brick. So here's the thing. You can't rely on any one thing. If you are looking at just the manufacturer and expecting that they're just going to take care of everything, good luck with that. The manufacturer, the single technology, the single organization, it's probably not enough. It's just like the rest of cybersecurity. You have defense in depth. You have zero trust. You go and you cross-check things. Well, that should apply to firmware too. Eclipsium monitors a profile. And the way that we sort of handle this is that we use all of the techniques that we can think of, all of the tools that are available to us, and we create a profile and we monitor for it. We look at it the very first time you see a device in your environment, and you kind of cover the whole life cycle, monitoring throughout its use and then at the end when it's going to be put away. And when you look at that profile, you get properties like vulnerabilities and updates, but you also get deviations, you get anomalies. And that's what tells you whether or not something's wrong. So that's how we would detect something like this, this Moonbounce attack. So doing that, you identify what you have, verify that it's correct, and fortify it as best as you can. And that's what gives you the full risk picture. It's what gives you cybersecurity. And so that's what brings me to the real statement here. Cybersecurity without firmware security isn't security. Thanks.